Here is our agenda for today. We'll be covering 1. The muscle machinery. 2. Fueling the engine. 3. The delivery system. 4. Hitting the wall. 5. The body upgraded. And finally, 6. Optimizing your performance. Let's get right into it.
Section 1. The muscle machinery. We're starting our journey at the absolute foundation of all movement, the microscopic fibers inside your muscles. Every single movement you make begins with a spark, a signal from your nervous system triggering a contraction. But looking at an endurance legend like Eliud Kipchoge next to a powerhouse sprinter like Usain Bolt, we immediately see why not all muscle fibers are created equal. Kipchoge relies heavily on type 1 fibers to just run all day long, while sprinters rely on explosive type 2 fibers. For an average untrained person, their muscles are usually a 50-50 split, but an elite marathoner, they might have up to 90% type 1 fibers. Meanwhile, a champion sprinter or weightlifter might boast 75% type 2 fibers.
Now, what's really wild is that your genetic predisposition actually locks in a lot of these parameters from the start. It dictates whether your muscles are built for slow, fatigue-resistant endurance or explosive, fast-twitch power. Type I fibers are your slow oxidative engines. They're packed with mitochondria and contract slowly, making them practically fatigue-proof. On the flip side, you have type 2X fibers. These guys have the highest sugar-burning capacity for rapid, instant power. But the catch, they fatigue almost immediately. Now, while targeted training can cause some minor shifting between the fast-twitch subgroups, your baseline distribution is pretty much hardwired by your genetics.
Section 2. Fueling the engine. Okay, so once your muscles need to move, how do they actually get the energy to do it? Think of your body like a high-performance hybrid vehicle. The ATP-creatine system, that's your instant electric torque. Anaerobic glycolysis is your high-revving gas engine, and the aerobic system is your highly efficient long-haul diesel engine. Here's the thing, your muscles only store enough raw ATP, which is basically the energetic currency of your cells, for about 1 to 2 seconds of work. After that tiny window, the creatine phosphate system kicks in, giving you 2 to 30 seconds of pure explosive power without even needing oxygen. But when that tank runs dry, your body has to transition to burning glycogen. For short burst energy, anaerobic glycolysis is incredibly fast. But the major downside here is that it creates lactate accumulation and metabolic acidosis. It's basically a massive chemical traffic jam inside your cells. When you burn glucose without oxygen, you get a quick hit of 2 ATP molecules per glucose molecule. Sure, it's rapid, but it's wildly inefficient. Plus, it produces hydrogen ions that drop the pH level in your muscles, creating that intense, famous burning sensation we all know so well. But let's look at what happens when your mitochondria take over to fuel your longest workouts using sustainable aerobic energy. This is a total game changer. By bringing oxygen into the equation, that exact same single molecule of glucose suddenly yields 32 ATP instead of just 2. And what if you start oxidizing fats through this system? You can produce a staggering 129 ATP per fatty acid molecule. Yes, it's a bit slower to spool up, but the energy capacity is practically limitless. Section 3. The delivery system. As your workout gets harder, your heart and lungs have to work overtime to deliver that precious oxygen to your working muscles. Because while aerobic energy is amazing, it completely relies on oxygen physically making the journey from the outside air into your mitochondria. And this brings us to the absolute holy grail of endurance, VO2 Max. This is the ultimate indicator of your cardiorespiratory fitness and aerobic capacity. It measures exactly how many milliliters of oxygen per kilogram of body weight you can consume in a single minute. Simply put, a higher VO2 max means a much higher ceiling for sustained, intense exercise. Your VO2 max is dictated by a mix of respiratory, cardiovascular, and muscular factors. For a sedentary adult, a normal score sits somewhere around 30 to 40. But extremely elite athletes routinely hit values over 85, and there are incredible outliers out there. For instance, Norwegian triathlete Christian Blumenfeld actually recorded a staggering 101.1. Just let that sink in for a second. Now, while your lung capacity definitely matters, in highly trained individuals, the ultimate bottleneck for VO2 max is usually cardiac output, which is just how much blood your heart can physically pump. To really put this into perspective, during sustained exercise, an elite athlete's cardiac output can jump from 5 liters a minute to over 35 liters. That is literally your heart pumping the volume of a massive bucket of blood every single minute. Let's break down how that actually happens. First, your sympathetic nervous system kicks in, redlining your heart rate to its maximum. Meanwhile, the muscular pump of your moving limbs forces more venous blood back to the heart. This increases your stroke volume, which is the amount of blood ejected per beat. Simultaneously, your lung ventilation absolutely skyrockets from a resting 7 liters of air per minute all the way up to 200 liters.
Section 4. Hitting the wall.
So, what happens when you push this amazing engine a little too hard? Well, no matter how fit you are, there is a hard physiological limit. When you cross your anaerobic threshold, your body's lactate levels begin to rise sharply. Why? Because it can no longer be cleared fast enough, which is a giant red flag signaling that exhaustion is imminent. At lower intensities, any lactate you produce is easily shuttled off to the liver or directly oxidized by the heart muscle for energy. But once you hit about 4 millimoles per liter, which is your maximal lactate steady state, the accumulation completely outpaces your body's clearance system.
You see, fatigue isn't just in your head. It is a very real physical depletion of your energy delivery systems paired with an accumulation of metabolic byproducts that literally slow down your muscles' physical mechanics. When hydrogen ions accumulate, the pH inside your muscles drops, and this directly stops the tiny filaments in your muscles from gripping each other properly. Add in depleted glycogen stores, a rise in core temperature, and central nervous system fatigue, which, by the way, is this absolutely fascinating mechanism where your brain actively reduces motor neuron activation to protect your body from structural damage. When all that hits, you physically cannot continue.
Section 5. The body upgraded. But here is the great news. Surviving these intense workouts triggers profound physiological remodeling. The stress you place on the system forces it to adapt and come back way stronger. Your body literally upgrades its own hardware. It increases the mitochondrial density inside your skeletal muscles and creates what scientists call physiological cardiac hypertrophy, which is really just a fancy way of saying you grow a bigger, much stronger heart. Your heart mass increases, which actually helps protect against heart failure, while your skeletal muscles grow more capillaries to deliver blood and pack in way more oxidative enzymes. When you compare a trained athlete to a sedentary person, the difference in efficiency is mind-blowing. A trained athlete's engine runs vastly more efficiently at rest, but possesses a massively higher capacity when they put the pedal to the metal. A world-class endurance runner might have a resting heart rate of just 45 beats per minute, compared to a sedentary 75. Why? Because their upgraded heart pumps so much more blood per beat, up to 100 milliliters at rest, compared to just 60, that it simply doesn't need to beat as often. Furthermore, this exercise actively improves your metabolic health. Muscle glucose uptake increases even without insulin, dramatically improving your baseline insulin sensitivity.
Section 6. Optimizing your performance.
So, the big question, how do we take all this incredible physiological data and actually use it to reach our ultimate potential? Well, while genetics absolutely deal you your starting hand, it's the combination of metabolic efficiency, smart training, and sheer mental grit that ultimately determines your success. You can maximize your physiological status through polarized training. This means spending about 80% of your time at a low, steady intensity and 20% doing high-intensity interval training to really push that VO2 max ceiling. But remember, you also need the neuromuscular coordination, the tactical decision-making, and the psychological stress tolerance to execute your plan when it really hurts. And of course, you absolutely must fuel this upgraded machine correctly. Losing just 2% of your body weight in fluid can actively sabotage all your hard-earned cardiovascular adaptations. Think about that for your own workouts. When you sweat out blood plasma, your stroke volume drops. That means your heart has to beat much, much faster just to maintain the exact same pace. You also need to stock the shelves with carbohydrates before and after a workout and hit a daily protein intake of roughly 1.2 to 2.0 grams per kilogram of body weight. That's crucial to repair the microscopic muscle traumas that actually trigger your strength adaptations. As we wrap up this explainer, I want you to consider this philosophical takeaway from biochemist Albert St. Georgi. Knowing exactly how your microscopic cellular machinery drives your greatest physical achievements, what limits are you going to push next? We've unpacked the incredible integrations of your heart, your lungs, your energy systems, and your muscle fibers today. Armed with this complete blueprint of human performance, the only question left is, how far will you take your own machine?